to make them, highly able to do things on their own. So that's basically who I am, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much, the Education Center, for having me here today. I look forward to sharing and learning from everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chizaram. It's a pleasure to have you. And it's really interesting because for Mr. Chizaram, we have had I think we have had a podcast with Mr. Chizaram at one episode of our Education Unscripted podcasts, and we spoke at length about what you do at Mavis Computel. And yes, we've had series of podcasts too that talked about inclusive education. So I am so very much interested in this conversation this morning because it's more like bringing someone who is so knowledgeable in the ed tech space and one who has done so much work in providing education for children with special needs and, neurotypical children in the same house. And this is really going to be an interesting conversation. So thank you very much for joining our listeners. Please keep your introductions coming, and let us just give a brief opportunity for our Assistant Program Manager, Utibe Henshaw, to do a quick introduction or recap of what we did with NEDIS 2021, which birthed this conversation this morning. So Utibe Henshaw will take it from here to give us a brief recap of NEDIS 2021 and why this conversation is very necessary. Okay, sorry, while we wait for that, we would like to have a short video of our NEDIS 2021 event just play, so everyone gets to have a brief recap of that event before UT comes up. We're also going to drop a link to the event on YouTube, so after now, everyone can have an opportunity to go through it, but let's just have a snippet of what happened at NEDIS 2021. We can't hear the audio, please. Can you help us with that?
Employers across a number of different sectors, and specifically looking at the talent pipeline and what employers are looking for. I would say that what is coming out of what the feedback from employers is that, one, where's the experience? Where is what are you, beyond your degree, how have you proactively gained experience? And that could be formal and informal, formal or informal. So the formal piece might be, okay, you've studied business and therefore you've done an internship or you volunteered in a local business or similar, and you've kind of gone down a very traditional route. For others, it may be, actually, what did you do with your time outside of study? Right. So in many cases, it's saying, okay, so, however many hours you spent studying, great, we know that. What have you done with the rest? How have you volunteered? Have you been, have you set up a side hustle online, moonlighting as, whatever, it doesn't matter, a YouTuber or an influencer or anything. What you're doing is, because if you're competing with so many other candidates, what makes you stand out? And your ability.
And those of us who are in education, who have been trained in education, are very often focused on the cognitive.
There's no video to that, please.
And those of us who are in education, who have been trained in education, are very often focused on the cognitive and the classroom and the assimilation, communication, storage, retrieval aspect of learning. But then the students leave the classroom, leave the institution, and go look for their livelihoods. And there has to be a handshake, because if we skill 500 million African youths, let's say we skill them with singing, but there's no demand for singing, and then
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that. That's just a snippet of what we had at NEDIS. We had speakers and we had about 4 to 5 sessions with panelists who spoke about skills development, vision for the skilled African youth. And it focused on the need for a handshake between the classroom and the industry. And that is exactly what Barbara Kasumu and Dr. Tunji Adegbeson of Gidi Mobile spoke about. So that is what bettered this conversation, because we wanted to see how young people can be prepared for the future that is now. Because in the past, we used to say, young people are the leaders of tomorrow, of course, but that tomorrow is here already. And we have young people who are unemployed, the employment rate increasing by the day. And we wonder what exactly should be done, or what would be the story tomorrow or years from now if the young people are not already prepared, with development taking place really fast and rapidly. So yeah, that's what bettered this conversation at NEDIS, and that same conversation we are taking down to our innovation series to deliberate further and have more robust conversations on these topics. And that is why we came up with the topic, tomorrow's future in today's classrooms, and that's what we hope to achieve with this topic today. So just to get started, we already had a brief introduction. So if you're just joining us, please drop where you're joining us from and your organization while we dive deeper into this conversation. So thank you very much, Mr. Chizaram and Mrs. Bolanle, for joining us this morning. We are really grateful. So could you please give us a brief introduction, a brief understanding of our topic today? What comes to your mind, Mr. Chizaram, when you hear about our topic this morning? What really jumps at you when you hear about this topic?
Okay, so from the topic, tomorrow's workforce in today's classroom, what comes to mind is thinking about how we can prepare children in school for the future they're about to face. So there's some data around that over 65% of the kids who are in school are learning stuff that they won't be able to use when they get into the workforce. So that means there's an urgent need to start taking a step back to reevaluate what these children are learning. That's right from primary school, secondary school, and even the university, so that by the time they finish, they are well prepared to fit into the global workforce. I won't just say the local workforce, because the world is very interconnected. With the event of COVID and remote work and all of that, we've seen lots of companies outsourcing more than before. You have people who are here getting work gigs from the US, France, wherever, and they are paid through interesting means as well. So there's a lot of things happening, and people need to be prepared for what's coming, because funny enough, lots of the jobs that are available now are going to be extinct in the next 5-10 years. So then there needs to be that early preparation. So that's what comes to mind.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mrs. Bolanle, would you like to drop a few words on your understanding of today's topic and what jumps at you?
Yes, so today's topic to me basically is preparing tomorrow's employee. It's being deliberate about what you put in them, or what you invest in them, what you expose them to, and developing all the right skills that will be necessary for them to be able to get into appropriate and aligned workforces when they, as they grow up. And I don't even think it's necessarily when they finally grow up. These are things that one can begin to start from this period, from as young. It's never too early to start to prepare them. And we simulate different types of environments to make sure that they have all the necessary tools that would land them the appropriate work environment, all the ethics that are necessary. So all these things indirectly are being, they're being nurtured behind the scenes. So when I saw this topic, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, so we need to identify the need to prepare them, and also understand what is needed to prepare them. And after you've prepared them, what next? Being able to also place them in the right environment where they can actually be fruitful and be fulfilled in their own way. So that's basically what came to my mind. And as it relates to special needs as well, I thought this is an opportunity to talk about them as well, being people that should also be in the workforce. They're people that are constantly ignored, or people not identified or reckoned with readily. So it's an opportunity to bring it forward and let them know that they also are functional, or can be functional, and they can actually be very beneficial within the society. So those are the things that came to my mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One of the things you said that really stood out for me is the fact that even after preparing them, we really have to place them somewhere to exhibit all they have been taught and to work. So it's not just preparing them, but giving them an opportunity to show that they are prepared. Yeah. So thank you so much. So I would like to ask Mr. Chizaram this particular question because of his experience, especially in the EdTech space. What skills deficit amongst the African youth population do you think exists? Given your experience in tech and in the education sector as well, what skills deficit do you think exists within the African youth population?
Okay, thank you very much. So there's a lot of focus on core subjects. And the sad thing is that we've been doing what we've been doing for a very long time, right from colonial rule. So people go to school, they learn English, they learn math, they learn science, and all of that, and then they come out into the workforce, and they wonder why they will still need to be listening to motivational speakers, because they figure out they finished all that and they are not getting to where they need to be. So for me, there are three things that I feel that young people need to gain proficiency in, and that's money or finance, that's technology, and that's people skills. Those to me are very, very important, because without money skills, most young people can't they won't be well equipped to improve their livelihoods. They'll just be regular. They just can't keep up and catch up with the world. So, and sadly, if they don't have proper finance skills, they'll keep making very poor long-term financial decisions. So they'll be wondering why. I was discussing with one of my bosses doing my IT some years ago, and he's a very funny guy. So he just sat down and he was like, you know what, I was thinking about it the other day, and millions have passed through my hands over the years, but I can't even see it now. He was just wondering why life is that way. So there are lots of people that have that same experience. So they are wondering, over the years, so much money has come through them, but they can't, as they are now, they can't hold it tangibly. They can't see where it is. And that's largely because they were not taught in school how to manage money or plan their financial future. So that's a skill that needs to be learned. Then technology drives so many sectors. So for me, I always say if anybody who wants to be relevant in the future, even with the way AI robotics are replacing so many jobs, and it's going to keep doing so, you still need to learn technology because it drives those processes. So if you still need humans behind those things to monitor whether it's the robots or whatever it is that will be taking over those roles, or AI systems. So you need tech skills, you need money skills, because money is still what moves the world, as it were. Then the third thing is people skills, because we interact with people every day. So if we are not intentional and smart about both networking, building lasting relationships, we'll basically lose out in the end. That is the simple truth, because there's a saying that money flows in the direction of trust. So if you don't know how to build those relevant networks, you struggle. So for me, those are my top 3 skills that I think African youth need to be taught, and it has to be embedded in the curriculum.
Thank you so much for that. Finance stood out for me so much, because even at, a lot of us, even people who are, older, let me use that word, still do not know how to manage their finances, do not know how to, attract money. Let me use that word. Yeah, so it's a really important skill. Finance, tech skills, people skills are really important skills young people should have. Really important skills. Mrs. Bolanle, would you want to take a stab at that question? Given your experience with working with children who have special needs and growing children from the cradle, would you want to tell us a little bit what you think are skills that young people, African youth should have?
Okay, so thank you for that question. There are many skills that they should have. And, I kind of try to narrow them down. But I think the first thing that jumps at me is the ability to step into other people's shoes, emotional intelligence. It's very important for them to understand that everyone exists in their own space and every space has to be respected. So once they know that, that's the starting point for them to launch out, because then they're able to appreciate everybody else's opinion. They're able to come to the table with their own suggestions and buy into other people's relational. So it's basically just teamwork and collaboration will be a very significant one for them to have. Then also, I believe they need to have problem-solving skills. So it's one thing for them to get into the workspace or to begin to aspire to get into the workspace and not know what to do. So there has to be a lot of reasoning, critical reasoning that is encouraged, analytical thinking, problem solving. So all these things are things that are infused into the curriculum, that should be infused into the curriculum from a very young age. So even they're learning them as fun. So it's like play, it's all simulated, but indeed the focus is on getting them to develop all these necessary skills that are important. Self-management is another thing, self-control. So when they do get wherever it is, they need to understand that there's some level of restraint that I need to have within certain types of environments and be able to be independent. And technology, like Mr. Chizara said, is a no-brainer. That's definitely one big one that is very important to have. And infrastructure is another big thing, because I find that, well, that for me is a deficit that I see in our environment. having the right environment within which to thrive, having access to all the necessary tools that are necessary to help them build. So there's because what we typically find is practical experience is not readily found in our learning environment. So our classrooms are mostly filled with all theory, so theoretical learning. So there's a lot of information, but there's no hands-on practical experience. So I think that is a very important one for them as well, because that's where the knowledge is actually assimilated and internalized. It is in the doing. So these are things that I feel are very necessary for children or for even young adults whilst you're trying to prepare them for the workspace. All these are things that should be in place to be able to get them to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate that, because even with the knowledge of really technical skills, there are soft skills such as problem solving, emotional intelligence, like you mentioned, that are very critical for any person to fit into the workspace. And yes, this particularly is very important. I would like you to, provide a little more insight into what you think are the factors that have limited development of these skills in young people.
Well, I think the first thing will be even us identifying the need for them to have that. So when you have adults around that do not recognize the need to train a child, or the need to position the child within the right environment for them to be able to learn and be ready. So that will be the first challenge. It's about us identifying. So everybody around them knowing that we are deliberate about putting all the skills that are necessary in place for them. And another one that I talked about earlier was infrastructure. And government, I'll say government regulations as well, will be something that will stifle, that will prevent them from getting to the place where they need to get to. Because when you are heading out and trying to set up all the amenities, you have the tools, you have the technology, technical skills, like you said earlier. So whilst you're trying to put all these things in place, if there is no backing from a larger body within your nation, it prevents us from getting to the next level. Mr. Chizaram talked earlier about preparing them for the global workforce. That is our desire. So we all want to prepare them for the global workforce, because at the end of the day, you want them to, they're all global citizens. So you want them to be able to fit in. But if within our own nuclear environment, our nation to start with, there are no regulations to guide us or help us take them to the next level, that would be a stifling force also for us being able to develop them. And then funding. Funding is another big one that will prevent us from getting to the place, because a lot of people have all the ideas, but there really isn't enough to take it off the ground, because some of them are capital intensive. And, just the thought of getting there. So people lose hope from the very beginning. Whilst they're thinking, whilst they're still dreaming, the hope is all gone. So if all these things are accessible, when you know that, okay, we can get the right funding, we have the right environments, we have the right regulations in place, then the innovation is promoted. Innovation, you're quick to think on your feet, you're able to sit and take decisions, knowing that there is support coming from somewhere. So if those things are in place, I think we would have less of a struggle to help them become the kinds of people that will be employable.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Mr. Chizaram, would you want to drop a thing or two? In addition
Okay, I think I'll drop a thing, just one. And I think that's curriculum. For me, that's one of the things that is actually limiting the development of these young people, because the curriculum we have is largely outdated. So I'll tell you, like when we have been developing our talking books, we followed the national curriculum, but we had to supplement it with content from the British and American curriculum to make it well-rounded. So our curriculum is not fit for now, it's not fit for the future. So it has to be radically revamped. So there was a report by the Education Commission in 2016, and they said that the level of education in developing African countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is 70 years behind that of developed economies like in Asia and Europe. 70 years, that's 7 and a 0. So we're really, really behind. And so they also mentioned that if the current trend doesn't change, we will need about 30 plus years to catch up. So, but what I feel is that without technology, you can't make much progress. With technology, you can leapfrog that gap. Because I'll give you an example. There's in the spy world, most people do not realize that that's where our photocopiers came from. So before, if people want to go, let's say it's US, they are going to spy on Britain or China or whatever, so they have an agent that goes into a sensitive building. They have to physically steal documents out and pass on to their handlers and all of that. So, but then over time, they built a very small device, almost like your card size, like your cigarette light box. So you move it over the paper and it scans the information. So you don't need to physically steal the document, as it were. So you could take the information, pass it on, and nobody will know anything happened. So that's how advanced these guys are. So those things were happening for years before they now declassified some aspects of it and made the photocopier. So that's the history of how photocopying machines came about. So you have lots of things that are going on in the advanced world, largely technology driven, and they only come out years later. So if we don't latch onto technology, we'll keep staying paces behind. So now there's a lot of stuff going on in blockchain, there's a lot of stuff going on in AI, in robotics, and we are still doing cramming and reciting. The teacher just comes and reads from their handouts in the university that they used when they were in school in the 1970s or 80s. All those things need to change. So we need to start using technology to speed up our learning. For example, I was taking a course recently in finance, accounting, valuation, and stuff like that. This stuff that if I was to go to university to learn, I'll need to maybe enroll in a 4-year course. But okay, I won't say I've finished it. I'm like module 40 something or 60 something, but in a week or two I should be done. So, but then, so that's what technology does. So you have courses on Udemy, you have people doing great work like what do you call them? There's this organization, the name skips me now, but they have an online school where you can take university courses here in Nigeria, across Africa.
Coursera.
So there's Coursera, there's this one that Future Africa, the Ian guy, backed recently. Later on, I'll remember. So you need to use technology to, one, shorten that time gap. So I honestly do not feel children need to be spending 6 years in primary school. I honestly do not feel they need to do another 6 years in the secondary school and 5 years or something in university. The world is moving fast. We need to catch up and we need to use technology to shorten that learning gap. So that's my thoughts. So the curriculum needs to change.
Thank you so much for that. I recently saw a tweet that said that the ability to Google something very well is also a very critical skill that every young person should have. And really, I agree with that. And something you said about the curriculum just strikes, just takes me back to NEDIS 2021 when one of our speakers said our curriculum has to be fit for purpose. So not just developing curriculum, but curriculum that actually caters to the need or of the skills need of young people. So thank you so much for that. I would like Mrs. Bolanle to take this question. How do we close the gap and create a balance between classroom and the industry? If you watched the short video I played earlier, Dr. Tunji Adebeson of Gidi Mobile said there has to be a handshake between the classrooms and the industry, such that our classrooms are providing the skills that are needed by the industry. So how do we create a balance between the classroom and the industry?
So thank you. It will be important first for the classroom to know what the industry needs. So once we know what the industries are, then we're able to strike the balance. And the balance will come from us setting up the children in a way. So for instance, when we know, I'll just take an example of a child whom we know is going into sales. So, and that is the industry for sales. And in the classroom, for us to be able to teach this child and prepare the child for that environment, the first thing will be to understand the industries. The handshake will come from us partnering with the industry. So we have a collaboration where they're able to come into school and we're able to go. So they're able to come into the learning space. We're able to, so when you have job fairs, for instance, where recruiters come to a school or a college to recruit the students, it's very important. Why they come into the school, one of the reasons they'll come into the school is to establish that the school actually is catering to the needs of their industry. And the school is able to do this by knowing them. So there has to be a relationship that is constant, a relationship that is fluid. And they're able to come in and we're able to go in. So people should have things like internships, like so before they are actually employed, they should have the opportunity to go into the industry and try it out, be able to align with the actual scope of work, align with the needs for the kinds of jobs that they do. So I think critically, the main thing will be to have a partnership with the industry. If there's a partnership with the industry, then we are able to strike a balance and teach the right things. Because if you do not know what is needed there, then you're just going to be teaching amiss, So it's very important that there is partner.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I lost you for a bit.
Yes, I think I lost you as well.
But yes, I got you. I got what you said. So thank you so much for that. And Mr. Chizaram, would you like to say something to add to what she said already?
Okay, yeah. So I think it's just an extension of the talk around the curriculum. So it has to be tailored to be fit for the jobs of now and the future. The university I was talking about is actually Nextford University. So what they do is that they tailor courses based on what the industry needs. So they do that constant survey. So they're having this back and forth in the industry, using AI, matching the needs from those surveys to find out what universities need and blend it into the curriculum. So you're almost guaranteed when you take a course on Nextford, these organizations are waiting for you with those skill sets. So that's what needs to happen. Then even there's this technology company I did some training with many years ago. It's called Huawei. So when I was interacting with some of their engineers, they mentioned that they have a 3-year program. So a number of them will actually finish secondary school and go through that Huawei's 3-year program. I think ZTE has something similar. So it's almost like a telecoms institute, as it were, like almost like a diploma. And when they finish, they absorb immediately into Huawei. So it's tailored to help them know how to work on their base station subsystems, their MSC systems, their optical fiber systems, radio systems, and all of that. So because in reality, when somebody is schooling, you're aiming to come out and get a job or do a business that will make you money so you can survive. So if you're not, you're just learning abstract stuff, and the industry is looking for something else, you'll just be be totally lost. And that's what's affecting Nigeria. We have over 39.1 million unemployed youth in the country. I think that number would have actually risen by now, because that's 2020 or 2021 data. So we need to start looking at, okay, industries need to be, have either a repository of information that, hey, these are the skill sets we need. Training institutes, universities, polytechnics, all these people need to start making sure that whatever they are doing is matching that. If they are still doing what they are doing before, they need to scrap that. And then the industry will still take people they need. So as long as people align with what they need, they will have job opportunities. But if they just go the conventional way, they are going to struggle to get jobs. So there needs to be that direct match. Next word, and some of these people are doing great work in that area.
Thank you so much. I agree with that. Yes, it's important to create a balance between what the industry wants and what the classrooms are providing. Yes, and of course, a mix of or a blend of these soft skills that are important to keep these people in the jobs. So yes, Mr. Chizaram, would you like to give us, or let us go to Mrs. Bolanle rather. Please give us what role you think in pedagogy or innovation in pedagogy is playing or will play in closing these gaps.
Yes. So the pedagogy now will be, sorry, ask the question again, because I think I'm trying to place what you're, ask the question again, please.
Yes, I am here. I'm sorry,
can you hear
I
me?
lost you for a bit, but I can hear you now.
Yeah, because I heard pedagogy, but then I didn't hear the whole thing. So I'm trying to make sense of what the question was. Are you there?
I said, what role? Yes, I said, what role has innovation in?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Pedagogy got to play in closing these gaps that exist in the skill sets.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I still didn't hear you. Sorry, okay. I lost you. You were talking. I heard a bit of it, but I didn't hear the whole thing you said.
That's fine. That's fine. So I was asking, what role has innovation in pedagogy got to play in closing these gaps that exist in development of skills in young people?
Okay, so basically the role innovation has in pedagogy has played will be getting the children, and well, I keep talking of children, so permits me to just come into school and take it from a children, because I'm trying to blend children and youth at the same time. So let me talk about people with special needs, for instance. So there are certain organizations, okay, there's one in Germany, I've been trying to remember the name once we started talking, where they hire people with autism only. So when you have such places, so what it basically is for them, they have understood that these people have certain skill sets. So there's some people with autism that are very high functioning. And because they're high functioning, they themselves are like robots in terms of the mechanical in their analysis of things. So being the case, once you understand them to be innovative in that way, you're able to bring them into that force to close the gaps by establishing that, okay, this is who they are, and getting them to be able to be productive for you. So in this company that I talk about, for instance, what they do is they look for certain types of people with autism, like, because they are mechanical, like I said, they basically don't want to interact. Their own part of what you find autists to do is they don't want to communicate, they don't want to socialize. So they're in an environment where all they're doing is just filing things and doing things with a computer. When you're in that sort of environment where you are empowered, in a place where you have the desire to do what is being done, you're able to be productive. And if we understand this, if we identify the innovation that everybody is able to bring to the plate and place them accordingly with the skill sets, then we're able to accomplish and close the gaps that are being generated by no innovation or lack of the knowledge of it.
Thank you so much. This means identifying the uniqueness of every child and every learner, and how they think and how they can come into play in portraying the skill sets they have or developing skills. So it doesn't matter if a child has a particular learning challenge or learning disorder or anything. It also means identifying how unique that child is and, tailoring that solution or that innovation to what that child's need.
Exactly, because once you, okay, because
Yeah,
another
please
thing
go
as
ahead.
we're talking now, because part of what it is I think the most critical thing is to understand that everyone has an innate ability.
Yeah.
There's something on the inside that we need to always tap into. So once we've tapped into that, we're able to pair them accordingly. And when you've paired them accordingly, when you put a round peg in a square hole, you're not able to accomplish. And if you're trying to judge the ability of an elephant by its ability to swim, then also you're not able to. But if you understand the skill set and pair them accordingly, like you said, then you're able to close the gaps and get much more out of them, more functionality and more ability to serve. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mr. Chizaram, I know you are not exactly a classroom teacher or do not have as much experience as Ms. Bolali would have in the classroom space, but yes, I know you are in the education technology space. So what role do you think innovation in pedagogy would play in closing these gaps?
Okay, thank you. So I'm not a teacher, like you rightly pointed out, but in our programs, I do get into the classroom to see what's happening and how they use our technology to learn, because that constant feedback loop is what helps us refine what we are doing. And through that process, we've also started working on our online solution to cater to a different segment of the market that we are missing before. So, so in my own understanding, because pedagogy is both about the what's involved in teaching and how kids learn and all of that. So what I feel is that there needs to be a shift towards learner-centered education models. This current model we're running in the country has been left behind by Finland and Singapore. In fact, even in the US and a number of developed countries, it's moving towards learner-centered education. So children need to take charge of their learning and be guided by the teachers. And then these teachers, that name needs to change, or that role. So it needs to switch or transition from teachers to what are called either learning facilitators or something that CanLab School calls directors of learning. So it's almost like an orchestra. So you're directing how the learning goes. So that's actually what needs to happen. So because children should be able to build a portfolio of their work and their learning journey. So it helps them know, oh, when I was here, this is what I learned. And I think anybody after this program, just go to CanLab School, take a look at what they are doing. We need more schools and education programs modeling what they do. And obviously the challenge is how to do that at scale, because they have a great model, but then there's a great price tag attached to it. So the lower middle school, which is like early primary school, is almost $30,000 a year, and not many people here will be able to pay that. That's over 16 million naira. So, but the model is really great. So you have a lot of focus that is tailored towards preparing these children for the future of work. So they look at mastery-based learning, where they make sure that the children cover all they need to cover and there's no learning gap. So they give that one-to-one support. They have manageable class sizes. They also have work on project-based learning, like I talked about. So they are teaching them things and making sure it's well-rounded. So the math teacher is well interfaced with the English teacher, the science teacher, the arts teacher. So they get well-rounded learning. They give them projects tied to real-world experiences. They don't give them yes or no answers, or okay, this is the answer that you see at the back of the textbook. No, this challenge that is posed to them, then they need to put together all their learning to figure it out. So there's no like, this is the answer at the end that we are working towards. So they can open their mind. It involves creative thinking, and it gets them to really be problem solvers. Because in my mind, I think we need lots more people like Jeff Bezos, like Elon Musk. If everybody's just going the traditional route, we can't move our society forward. So we need a lot of thinkers. We need people who are building stuff, creating stuff. But even for us here in Africa, we talk about how small our economy is. So in fact, when I look at things like the annual reports of people like Tesla, Apple, Samsung, and the likes, and our national economy. So you see, okay, let me give you one recent example. So Microsoft bought a big gaming company, Activision, for about $68.7 billion. Our national budget in Nigeria is roughly over around 25 billion. So one company wakes up and buys another company for almost over two times our national budget. And they have bigger cash reserves, and their valuation is even a whole lot more. So these are companies that are worth almost $1 trillion or more. So if our economy is that small, we need to create solutions that enable us sell what we are creating outside, whether it's through our knowledge economy or soft digital assets that we're selling, so we can get in revenue from outside and grow our economy and expand. And also there needs to be that concerted effort to turn young people into problem solvers. When you solve problems, people will pay you for it. And if you do it well enough, they can pay you from wherever they are in the world. They don't have to be, your market doesn't have to be Nigeria. So we need to get young people to start thinking with that mindset. If we don't do that, whatever learning we are giving them in school is of no use.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chizaram. Thank you so much. Before we open the room for question and answers, my participants, you can start dropping in your questions if you have any questions for our speakers while we take our last question. Mr. Chizaram, I would like you to, provide us a little what you think is with an understanding of the global market, and global market relevance, and what skills are selling in the world. Of course, we know like you mentioned earlier, we have to contextualize skills development to suit our African setting and what it is, what challenges we have that these skills should solve. But with the growing rate of unemployment in Nigeria, and of course the statistic which you stated just a few minutes ago, what quality skills do you think will significantly reduce the youth unemployment in Africa?
Okay, so I think the answer to this question is what I actually said at the beginning. So I'll just do a quick recap. It's money, skills, it's technology skills, and it's people skills. So maybe if you want to use an acronym, because I use mental acronyms to remember things. So say MTP. So it's money, technology, and people skills. So that for me is very, very, very important because like now you see the world is changing. There's a lot of stuff happening with blockchain technology. There's decentralized autonomous organizations. So very soon, in the next 5-10 years, you're going to be seeing less of, oh, this my companies an LTD or PLCs. You're going to be hearing these companies are DAOs, DAOs. So there's a whole lot of things happening. And if people are not keeping a pulse on trends that are going on, they'll be left behind. So you need to follow the money, you need to follow where the technology is going. I need to build a very strong network of people because nobody's an island, so we all interoperate. So that's how the world works. Once you have those three skills, and like Mrs. Adewale talked about emotional intelligence, you're good to go.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bolani. Would you like to add to that?
So indeed, I think technology is, I would say technology is number one of what is selling in the world. Then also, I would add education. I think education is a field that I don't think would ever run dry. So it's important that, yes, whilst we're developing the technology, we're also understanding that we prepare children for areas like for technology, for education. Another skill that I think is selling in the world today will be, well, half and half. I think ability to market. You find that with the young people of today, so for instance, if you speak to the youth of these days, most of them tell you they want to start their own business. I was talking to someone on Sunday and I said, I don't know why this generation focuses more on owning their own thing. Nobody wants to work for anybody anymore. So you wonder what it is out there that makes them feel they have to have their own business. And by the time everybody has their own business, where do we all end up as, on the globe? So indeed, what I would think is important is, yes, technology, education, and sales. Being able to sell yourself, being able to sell your product, being able to navigate around what it takes to put your product out there, have a brand, be able to create a brand. So if you have the ability to do these things, and of course the people skills as well, the emotional intelligence, empathy, having the confidence, being reliable, so people know that they can actually rely on you, being able to use your initiative, and just having all those things will help you position yourself for the sellers, the things that are being, promoted out there today that would actually put you in a place. If you're able to sell things, then people would always come to you, and they can use you for anything, really. You can sell the ability to campaign for people, ability to legal. So just sales, being able to put yourself, use social media, be able to use technology. And it's just a mix of things, but I would say technology, education, and sales. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I agree with you, because regardless of how much skill you have, even when you go for an interview, they'll ask you, well, how can you help us solve our problems? So that's like selling yourself. So that's a really very important skill every young person should have. And this reminds me of what Mr. Chizaram said about earlier on about having money and having people. Reminds me of our conversation during NEDIS when Dr. Joe Abba spoke about, he left a very important point about when money finishes, people remain. So when we have, of course, we have a lot other areas to make money from, so many areas. We have agriculture, we have a lot of sectors, to make money. But when all of this is not bringing in money, what happens? The young people, the workforce we have, who are so energetic, and these are the people we would depend on. So if they are not skilled enough to stand in at such time, it will become a really big problem. So please drop your questions. Our speakers are here to take your questions while we just have Itibe Henshaw come on to give us a brief recap of what we did at NEDIS and what we are doing now, and how this series is going to continue for the next few months. You too, please.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great, fantastic. I want to thank everyone for being here this morning, particularly our speakers, Ms. Adewale and my good friend Chizaram. It's really exciting to be listening to the conversation that we're having and the really interesting perspectives. I think that we have a very good combination of perspectives and experiences. Chizaram from tech, and business and commerce, and Adewale from the school. At one point you apologized, Ma, from speaking from the perspective of a child, and I was saying to myself, don't do that. That's why you're here. Like Vivian has said, really these conversations are a way for us to keep engaging. So we've had the annual Education Innovation Summit that we host as an organization. It's called NEDIS. And we've hosted NEDIS 6 times now in 7 years. And the last edition was the first fully virtual edition of the event. And one of the things we Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, so one of the things we committed to doing early in NEDIS, particularly from the second year, was we wanted to keep the conversation going. We didn't want to be conference, once in a year conference, talk show. Everybody goes back to their normal business, and then we come back 1 year later to rehash the same problem, to rehash the same conversation. So we wanted to create a platform for collaboration, continued engagement, and then slowly but surely partnerships and synergies, and finally skilled, solutions, skilled innovation. And that's why we're doing this particular conversation today, because we realize that you cannot discuss everything in one meeting. If we were to tap the wealth of Chizaram's experience or Mr. Adewole's experience, we will not have the time to fully digest it and see how we can apply these lessons for the sector, in a 75-minute conversation. So we're going to keep this conversation going. You're going to, we'll keep it going through our newsletter, through our podcast. I think both of you have been on our podcast at one point or the other. And then monthly, we would have these gatherings, whether it's virtual or it's physical or a hybrid of both. And the idea is that the more like-minded individuals and organizations continue to work together, even if we have different perspectives to the problem. For instance, a policymaker, could be in this conversation asking himself, okay, so Chizaram has talked about the curriculum. Where do I start? Do I start with embedding finance in the curriculum? Who has done that type of work before? And how do I scale? What impact have you had? Or somebody who is thinking about making the transition from school to workplace easier or more efficient for special needs children. So we have every member of our society. There was something Mr. Adewale said that struck me, that everyone has their own space and each space is important. So I think that's something that we need to recognize in the education sector, both in terms of skills, in terms of our ethnicities, in terms of our priorities, as a people. Everybody is important in their own space. So we're going to keep this conversation going in the hopes that synergies like this begin to pop up and we begin to see opportunities to scale and to collaborate so that we can significantly move our country and continent forward. There's quite a lot about, a lot of information out there about how much deficit we have and how far behind we are and how people are scrambling to get to the moon or to get to Mars and to build an apartment or to do real estate in other planets. And we are still figuring out, life. But I think that there are significant opportunities for us to leapfrog that process. And that's one of the things that we're committing to as a NICE and NEDIS. So I just wanted to share that and say thank you so much for coming. And following this event, we'll share with you the full communique from NEDIS, and also you'll be able to watch the live stream on YouTube or what have you, and also the insights from this conversation. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, UT, for that. Thank you so much. We'll jump right into our question and answers so that we can, we don't take too much of your time. The first question says, please, will we have access to the recorded version? Yes, you can find the recorded version on YouTube. You can watch it whenever. It's also happening live on YouTube right now. And even after the event, it's going to be there for you to have a replay. Thank you so much. We have another question. Thank you so much to both speakers. Very insightful so far. I want to ask both speakers if they see any opportunity for us as a continent to leapfrog. For instance, in Nigeria, we mostly moved from NITEL to mobile phones. We skipped the whole landline in every home phase of that evolution. In education, how do we leapfrog from 70 years behind? This is a very important question, and I don't know who would like to go first, but Mrs. Adewale, would you like to go first?
Yes, very important question indeed, to leapfrog and get there where they are. I think Chizaram made some very vital, Mr. Chizaram made some very vital points when he was talking. And what is most critical is about the style of teaching. If our style of teaching is modified, we will get farther in the space and on the continent. If we begin to focus on the uniqueness of the child, if we realize that every child is different and every child has innate abilities and we tap in, so teachers should not just go into classrooms and call them. Like at our school, when he was talking, I was thinking, oh, wow, has it been to the learning place? Our teachers, we don't have teachers, we have directresses. So the people that teach in class are called directresses. The Montessori materials actually do the teaching. So when you are being taught not by and the Montessori materials in themselves have the control of error, which means that if you get it wrong, you will notice at the end that something has not added up. This is allowing them to think by themselves. By the time more of us begin to get children to actually think by themselves, and our focus is on learner outcomes, we're not focusing on comparison. So every child is different. We're not doing report cards of somebody coming first and this one coming 27th in class. Everybody just have standardized benchmarks for determining who did. So if you know that at the end of the day, this is what my curriculum hopes to achieve. So have curricula that are set to achieve certain objectives, not in comparison. So if they have attained those objectives, they have done well. So by the time we start to do more of this, we allow the children to be free thinkers. We allow them to explore. We allow them to come up with innovative ideas by themselves. So they're not thinking. So I say to people that I don't even believe thinking out of the box is enough. It's also important to be able to create your own box. If we encourage children to begin to create their own boxes, then we find that we will begin to catch up with the world in education, because what we see out there compared to what we have here, we're still a very long way. 70 years, they say. We might even be much more than that. But indeed, I think if we all begin to focus more on getting every child to be independent, on getting every child to be who they are, to be able to follow their motivation, you're teaching from the space of what does he want to learn, as opposed to what do I want to teach him, we'll get much farther. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Bolanle. Mr. Chizaram, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, so just briefly, I think we need to be more data-driven in our approach to things. So when somebody says we are 70 years behind, that means there was a research process that went into that to arrive at that number. And if they say it's going to take us 30 to 40 years to catch up if we don't do something drastic, they did some analysis to arrive at that. So the same way we need to use data to drive our decisions. Like when we talked about linking the skills needed with what the industry needs. So we need to go to the industry and find out, what do you guys need? You're a Nestle, you're a Dangote, you're an MTN. What are the skills you need? Or you're a Chicken Republic or whatever, because there are some rules that are even well-paying that are behind the scenes that some people do not see. So they will always be wondering, why is it these foreign guys coming and taking all our jobs? But there's some things that we're not using data to drive our decision making. So if we use data to find out what do these people need, we catalog it and structure it so that right from primary school, because knowledge is a build-up. So you don't just jump from nothing to something mega. You go, it's incremental learning. So elements of what will get you to where you're going needs to be infused in the curriculum in primary school, secondary school, university, PGD, and all of that. So that matching needs to happen. If not, we're going to come back 5 years and still be having the same conversation. So we need to use that data to match what the industry needs with what we're being taught in school right from an early age. So that's how I see it.
Thank you so much. Our solutions have to be learner-centered and data-driven. Thank you very much for that. This question is from Mrs. Adewale. You made a point about making a place for children in the workplace. How do we sensitize employers to prepare the workplace for children with special needs? Otherwise, what's the point of skilling them up?
Okay, that's an interesting question, because one of the things that excited me when I saw the theme here is tomorrow's workforce. We're actually in the process now where there's a project that I'm part of where we're trying to set up an innovation center for people with special needs, well, for adults with special needs, because we find that they go to school, they do all these learning. It's only out of Nigeria that you find that they are appropriately placed, or they're placed in a place where they're functional. But in this environment, they're still being kept at home. So after they've gone to school and gotten to a certain age, there's no university to take them. So they take them back home and they're functioning from home. But very importantly, these days, we need to understand that because a good number of them are also very intelligent, they can actually make a difference within the society. If you use their skills, we can develop much more. So if we understand this, we're able to create something for them. So this was why at the beginning I talked about policies, governmental policies being very important, and funding as well. But part of what we are doing in our own little space is we're already thinking of setting up an innovation center. We've partnered with institutions in Nigeria locally, as well as institutions in the US at this point. So it's still in the process, but if we had many more opportunities to have innovation centers of that type, if we could just walk in and you're finding them everywhere, you find many more special needs people being used for what they have, as opposed to being kept aside, thinking they have nothing to offer, and in essence, missing what they can actually bring to the table. So very important that we understand that and begin to empower them, have many more facilities for people with special needs to be able to come into and work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We are behind time. So let me take the third question quickly. My question is, how do we upskill and reskill teachers to become learning facilitators in schools and learning centers? Zadewale, could you please take that?
Training. We have to train them. We have to be very deliberate and intentional about the skill set we want the teachers to have. And once we know this, we arrange to get them to be trained. And once they get you're very deliberate and you keep on making it happen. You have set periods, so you can do an annual thing. You can do like you're doing now, incidentally. In fact, this is a good platform to actually answer that question. So what you're doing now is you have NEDIS, and after NEDIS, you come back and you keep it going. So you have to keep the conversation going in order for it to eventually sink, for people to get up and do. One person will go from here today and do something about what they had not done before just because they were here. So if these types of training are constantly coming, if you find that they are available, then people are going into them. Teachers are being trained over and over again. Something will deposit and they will eventually internalize best practice and the best methods with which to teach the children of this age. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This question is by Ngozi Wadialo. She says, how do we ensure the sectors in the ministry that are in charge of the curriculum development become revolutionary to change the archaic setback in innovating pedagogy? Mr. Chizaram, would you want to take that?
Okay. I was hoping you shift that question when it comes to
yes, you would still have to.
when it comes to the government and all. But like Mrs. Adewale said, I think there needs to be some retraining and there needs to be some rewards / incentives for doing a new thing that is the right thing. Because funny as it is, people are moved by rewards. So if they don't see a reward for a change, they will just stick to the status quo. So that's what I'll say. So there needs to be even more competitions. So if you have, like the person is talking about the ministry, that may be at the federal level, maybe at the state level. So the more competitions you have across schools, public, private, across states, across regions, and even across the continent. So you can now start saying, okay, these guys in South Africa, there's a lot of industrialization going on there. And the competition is tailored towards how do you learn to build this? How do you learn to do this? So that if Nigeria keeps failing in that competition for 5 years consistently, we will see the reason why we need to change our curriculum. But if we just stick and compete within ourselves, nothing is going to change. We need more of those things to happen. So there needs to be a reward for doing a new thing the right way. So that's how I see it.
Thank you so much. That relates to what we had at NEDIS when Eyitayo said there has to be some level of incentives we have to normalize incentivizing some of these initiatives. Thank you so much for that. We have another question from Chibuzo Unachukwu. He says the Lagos State Ministry of Education is very insistent on having a hand in the independent schools curriculum. This could be limiting. Do you have any suggestions on how to circumvent this challenge? Mrs. Adewale, I think you'll be able to answer this question.
Yes,
well.
so I think very importantly, we need to, as educators, we need to partner with the people that make the policies. We need to find a way to be heard. So if we all come together as educators, the more of us, the better they would listen. So if we're all speaking with the same voice and we are actually trying to influence what the policymakers are making or the policymakers are coming up with, because imagine some person who goes into government position and does not even have a qualification in education, being the one to design your curriculum for you. So we need to also be active and place ourselves in places where we can actually be heard. So I think the most important thing will be to partner with policymakers and be able to be heard. And yes, the streamlining. So part of what we've had recently has been the calendar, the school calendar that Lagos State government came up with. And they're insisting that every school has to follow this calendar. There has been a lot of outcry. Some people don't like it and all of that. But I think the way we all would eventually get a resolution is if we all come together to partner with them. We're not fighting against government. We're not getting into bed with government when things are not okay, but we are partnering and collaborating and nicely putting our opinions forward and being heard. So if we position ourselves in that way, it will go a long way towards achieving what we really would need and use at the end of the day. So I think partnership and collaboration with government and policymakers to be able to influence policies would definitely go a long way towards getting us to a place where we would actually yield. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for this wonderful session. I am very sure our participants have learned a lot. Our participants, you can check in the chat box, you would see a link to the website of our speakers, Mavis Computel and the Learning Place Limited. Please look up their websites and follow them up on Twitter and on Instagram. And thank you so much for this very wonderful session, for contributing, for asking questions, and thank you so much to our speakers. We really appreciate your being available whenever we call. It is such a pleasure to have you on this session, and I am sure we have learned a lot. Please follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at nice_innovate. We'll be happy to continue this conversation, and look out for our email for the very next edition of the Nice Innovation Series. Thank you so very much, Mrs. Adewale. Thank you so much, Mr. Chizaram, for this wonderful session. We appreciate you and we love you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
and
you
keep
so
up the
much.
good work.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Bye for now.
Okay, bye.
the training arm of the Education Partnership Center. At Tech Learning Academy, we provide capacity development support to professionals and organizations working in the education and development sectors. We leverage the experiences and skills of our facilitators to design, develop, and deliver well-researched course content that gives our participants the relevant knowledge and exposure in the subject area. At TEP, technical training to education and development sector actors through a blend of academic and practitioner insight. You can see our growing suite of courses on www.teplearningacademy.com. We deliver as open enrollment and bespoke course packages depending on our clients' learning needs. For inquiry about how we can serve your organizational learning needs, please contact us via email at learningacademy@tepcenter.com. Thank you.